Thank you.
Alive, sir.
All right, we are live. So first item here, Elizabeth, can I get you to do a roll call?
Yes, sir. Chair Lewis.
Here.
Member O'Reilly.
Here.
Member Bechtel. Member Clow.
Here.
Member Conway.
Here.
Member Hamilton.
Here.
Member Salazar. Member Guerrero Ortiz. Member Pino. You do have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, item 2 here is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
United
America,
States of America and to
and
the
to the
republic.
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
This for all.
Thank you. Okay, is there or anybody have comments on the agenda? Any amendments to the agenda, or can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Cloud seconds.
Thank you. Ms. Martin for the roll call.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Member O'Reilly.
Yes.
Member Clow.
Yes.
Member Conway.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda here is approval of minutes from the meeting on 2/10/2022. I was not present for that, but I will see if anyone had any comments. Or is there a motion to, or Member O'Reilly, is that a comment or is that a motion?
That's just a correction.
Yes.
Page 6, paragraph 6. Ms. Martin, the first word park, P-A-R-K, should be part, P-A-R-T.
Thank you, Member O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Move to approve with that amendment.
Thank you, Member Conway. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Elizabeth, do you want to run the roll call?
Yes, sir. Chair Lewis.
Approved.
Mr. O'Reilly.
Yes.
Ms. Clow.
Yes.
Or sorry, Member Conway.
Yes.
Member Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Staff communications. Anything we need to know about for this meeting?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Wheeler?
not from me.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to recognize Lee Logston. He actually has a new job in a different department and he's still managing the CIAC for us, and we just can't thank him enough for his work on this. Way out of, just way beyond the regular transition. So I'd just like to recognize him for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for working on this. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. With no additional communications, maybe let's turn over to the action items, and I believe Ms. Wheeler will talk us through these.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is item 6A, is a request to approve the reallocation of $750,000 of road impact fees from the Montezuma Sandoval intersection project to the construction of the Cañada Rincon Trail project. I think the memo is pretty self-explanatory. It explains that that intersection project is bogged down in some pretty significant right-of-way issues and won't be constructed for another year. And we have sought alternate funding for it. And so we'd like to use the impact fees to get the Cañada Rincon Trail constructed this year. And of course, we're all dealing with increasing prices. So there's a significant funding gap from what we have to what we need to construct, and this would get us home free on that. So thank you so much. I'll staff for questions.
Member Conway?
Did I read the memo correctly, Ms. Wheeler, that for the Sandoval Montezuma, that there's a different federal funding source, so potentially you wouldn't be coming back to the CIAC for funding later?
That's correct.
Good, and I mean, I will, I know that there was some email traffic regarding whether or not we can use, I think, road impact fees for this trail. And I know that Pat had some good commentary, and then Member Guerrero Ortiz had some questions on it. I don't know if anybody have comments. Member Cloud, do you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just have two comments. One, in the report, I liked having the amount of money available to use and then subtracting from that what this would leave. That's very helpful. And the second issue is it possible that in these reports, one of the first things that we can address is how this complies with the use of impact fees? I know we got the memo from the Assistant City Attorney, but I really think that that needs to be in everybody's report, that's really the first thing that should be in the report is, number one, how does this comply with state and city ordinances on being appropriate expenditures, because I think it's just really helpful.
Thank you. Yes, we'll do that. We'll work with Pat to get that as a first paragraph or second paragraph in the memo. Once you're introduced to the request, then how it complies. Thank you for that reminder.
Were there other questions on this project?
Mm-mm.
Or Ms. Wheeler, do you want to speak to how this, oh, sorry, Member O'Reilly.
I just wanted to echo what Member Klaus said about having the numbers in the memo. That was super helpful. And if there aren't any other questions, I would move to approve item 6A.
Second.
All right, Ms. Martin, will you do a roll call?
Yes, Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Member O'Reilly,
Yes.
excuse me, Member Clow,
Yes.
Member Conway,
Yes.
Member Hamilton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Welcome, Member Guerrero Ortiz. All right, so we are on to action item number 6B. Back to you, Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Can you hear me okay? I got a note that okay, good. I just need to get a little closer, I think. So this, thank you so much, Chairman and members of the committee. This is a request to supplement some NMDOT funding that we received to expand capacity on both Bishop's Lodge Road and Henry Lynch Road to meet demands of the growing community. We received $800,000 for design for both of these, or phase one for both of these projects, but it was not enough to cover that cost. And so in order to kick these projects off and get through public engagement, preferred alternative analysis, and conceptual design, we're seeking additional funding. We're seeking $367,003 for Bishop's Lodge Road reconstruction and $187,447 for Henry Lynch Road reconstruction, combined amount of $554,450. And I think the rest is explained in the memo, and I'll stand for questions.
Member O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly in favor of approving this request, but I had a question for you, Regina. What is the total current construction cost estimate for Bishop's Lodge?
So it's just a budgetary estimate at this point, since we don't even have conceptual at all. And I'm not even sure we put that on an application at a phase one state. And I may be able to dig, I can look at her applications really quickly.
I think, if I may, I know that when we add these things to the table 80 in the IFCIP, we put a placeholder number in there, and I know that that's a very rough estimate. I guess I'm just looking for an order of magnitude. Is this a $5 million project or more like a $20 million project? And you can get back to us on that, Regina, if you want to look around while other people ask questions.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I should be able to give it to you within just a minute.
Ms.
Right.
Wheeler, you are cutting out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I should be able to, okay, I'm at the application that we sent to DOD to get the 800,000. So that should, may have a rough estimate. Yes, total project cost design and construction for Bishop's Lodge is, I'm sure, massively underestimated at 5,860,000. I'm going to say 10 easy. We're talking about reconstructing the road and adding bike lanes to a mile of roadway. It's not going to, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think a good example is Guadalupe Street is not even a mile, adding bike lanes and sidewalks, and that's at 10 million right now.
Okay. I appreciate that. I agree with you. I think 5 million is probably low in today's world. But I think 10 million could easily be the number. The reason I asked the question, Mr. Chair, is with this increase in cost for design services, it brings the design services end of this to almost $1.2 million. It's 1.127 if I think I've got it right. And obviously on a $5 million project, you know, that's almost 25%. On a $10 million project, it's more like, you know, well, it would be, I guess, 11.2%. It seems really high to me. I'm just speaking as a former consulting engineer. It makes me want to go back into private practice. I honestly, and I understand, Regina, that you don't have a whole lot of control over that. But here's my problem with what the consultant did to estimate the fee. They simply took the length of road, the additional length of road that they were going to be designing, and used that as a pro rata percentage to increase their fee. And I'm sure, you know, committee member Guerrero Ortiz could speak to this, but you know, you have a whole bunch of money in there that is used just to design the project, and I think it's a little bit they're taking advantage a little bit by saying, well, because the road extends another 25%, our fee has to extend exactly 25%. So I'm in favor of this. I'm going to vote for it, but I would just say that, especially with a company like Wilson and Company, who I think the city uses for all kinds of things, I just feel like they're really, this is a bit high for a fee. And that's just my comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member O'Reilly. I would like to comment on that. You know, we thought the same thing, and we did ask for another quote from it. So we got quotes from WSP and Wilson to compare. So when things come in like this, we're like you. I mean, at this point, we're all adjusting to this new reality. But yeah, so we will, you know, and I might ask, since you're interested in that level of detail, Ramela, to attach quotes to this. We could do that. We certainly do that sometimes when we go to governing body for approval with things, so that you can see that we have done some competitive analysis to make sure that we're not being completely overpaying for the services. So thank you for raising that up, and we'll continue to watch that and provide you with information about it.
I appreciate it. You know, you did provide quite a bit of information in both items, which is how I found out how they, you know, calculated their increased fee. So that was really appreciated. And I know that, you know, like you said, there's not a whole lot we can do. But gosh, don't expect to, you know, don't be surprised if you see O'Reilly Engineering back there on your bidders list with $1 million to design a relatively small road. Wow. Anyway, thank you, Regina. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think that's a good comment and important to discuss. So thanks for bringing it up. Member Guerrero Ortiz.
Hi, thank you. So I have a couple of questions. It seems like the original scope was Paseo del Peralta to Circle Drive, and then it was altered from Artist Road to the county line. I would have thought that Artist Road to Paseo del Peralta is the area that was most used by the public. So I was kind of surprised you were taking it out of the scope, and I wanted to understand why.
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. Chair and Member Guerrero Ortiz. That's actually DOT roadway from PDP to Bishop to Hyde Park Road. So, and those guys are actually underway in a study of reconstruction of the entire Hyde Park roadway starting at PDP. So going around that corner and up the end. We had originally applied for, thought that we just do a mile of Bishop's Lodge, but then we noticed that, we really should go to the county line, and that'll really help us solve some of the problems coming over that hill. So that's why we extended on that direction and reduced it in the other direction, because it's actually state road.
Okay, and then I have a follow-up question. I noticed that the fee does not currently include traffic control plans. That surprised me. That's what it says in the Wilson and Company's memo. And so are we anticipating that Wilson's going to come back and ask for another change order?
Thank you so much for that question as well. And I guess Ramela has her hand up and on, but I'll just say, this is design, so there won't be any in the field interruption of traffic yet. That would come later during the construction. So traffic control would come in a later scope phase.
No, the question is traffic control plans. Those are prepared by the engineer, usually during design.
Okay,
So,
thank you. And I will let Ramela answer. She seems to be prepared.
Mr. Chair, you need to call on Romella.
Ms. Gloriosa Mas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Member Guerrero Ortiz. And so if I can just go back to your first question, that we spoke with the NMDOT yesterday with Mr. Javier Martinez with regards to the project termini, the original project termini. And he said that that we could start this project from the original project term, Paseo de Peralta, up to the boundary of the county boundary. He's still looking at the possibility of not amending this formally, but to do an administrative change. An administrative change. But with regards to the second question about why is not traffic control plan is included in the proposal, it's because this is transportation project funding funded. The review of the 90% plan, this design plan, and we will not go for PSNE review with NMDOT because that is how the funding is designed. So when this project is going to be constructed, then we will work with the TCP traffic control plan. Thank you for that question.
Member Guerrero Ortiz, just want to confirm your questions were answered.
Yeah, they were. I understand why the scope was changed. Yeah, and I would agree with Mr. O'Reilly that the design fee seems extremely high to me.
Okay. Member Wheeler, Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you so much, Chair and Member Guerrero Ortiz. I wanted to add as well, and I know that you both, Member O'Reilly and Member Guerrero Ortiz, but for the other members of the committee, this is not at all simply designing the roadway. There's extensive public engagement required for a proper phase 1A that meets all of the requirements of the process. There's extensive research. This is like the most cumbersome type of work that you can do as an NMDOT project, and following all the specifications and all the documentation and all the reporting for the reimbursement. I mean, it is heavy duty. So any engineer would, and I would take their, regular, what the design work is, and you really double that because of the overhead of the reporting and the public engagement and the responses to comments. And so it's really much more than just design. And I know that you guys are aware, but we do regularly expect 20% of the project cost to go to work that's not construction. So that's our rule of thumb and has been for some time. And so that I think further indicates what I think Member O'Reilly was saying, which is that the overall total project cost maybe that were early envisioned for these projects is an underestimate. And then that makes this number look even worse compared to that. But we'll continue to monitor that closely and make sure we get competitive quotes.
Great, helpful context. Member Hamilton?
Yes, I have a question. I think it's a training opportunity for me. What is the difference between Table 80 list and what is on our documents today under Table 2? And I'm asking because Bishop's Lodge isn't included in the Table 2 provided for us in the packet today. And the numbers for Henry Lynch at 22.5 are very different from what's on Table 80 as budgeted. So I'm just curious about what do those two lists have in common? And what's the difference between the two lists?
Want to answer that, Ramona? I could answer.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, Member Hamilton, thank you for that question. So at the last CIAC meeting, the committee approved the updated Table 80.
Mm-hmm.
We went to the governing body to approve the changes via resolution, and the governing body approved the resolution on March 31st.
Mm-hmm.
Resolution 2022 I can't remember the number 80 plus. And so that is the difference. The difference is that in that amount, we updated the project cost estimate, because when that cost estimate was estimated, it was a number of years ago. And so we updated the cost estimate based on the current NMDOT bid prices. Thank you.
Ms. Wheeler?
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. If I could add to that, isn't the difference significantly, Ramella, that Table 80 is all the projects that are eligible for funding, and Table 2 are the projects that have been approved for funding and the amounts thereof? So that's really completely different, right? Table 80 is the total project cost and what's eligible, and in 2, Ramel is doing that great work for us of tracking what we've already approved and how much it all adds up to.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that's exactly why the Bishop's Lodge is not on this list, Table 2, because it has not been approved yet. Does that answer your question, Member Hamilton?
Well, and I guess my question now is, if it's not been approved, why are we talking? Why is it up for discussion?
Because we're looking to approve spending funds on it right now.
Correct.
It is. So until we vote on it, it won't be part of Table 2, even if it is part of Table 80 as an eligible project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So after this meeting, let's assume we all voted yes, then it would show up in the subsequent meeting as 534,000 or whatever the total is for both.
Okay.
554 for both these projects.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mr. Lawson, did you have a comment, or we get there?
Well, we had one of our committee members in the attendee room. I didn't recognize it was him. He had his hand up, but now he's rejoined us as a panelist.
No, my the power went out here, so I had to pop back in.
Good. And then I guess a final question, just to confirm, we're able to use our impact fees for design related, the design aspect of the project, right? We don't have to wait until the actual building. And then part two of that is, how confident are we that we'd be able to get the 10 million funded at the time that it's actually designed, or are we designing a project that we won't be able to afford?
Thank you, Chairman. I will, maybe I would defer the first question about the eligibility to Pat about design, if that would be appropriate.
That's fine, yeah.
Yes, so part of what is allowed is design. It's, sorry, I've lost the, to acquire or construct capital improvements or facility expansions, including planning, surveying, and engineering fees paid to independent qualified professionals.
Okay.
And there are some other similar factors, but I believe this would fall under
Yep, that's
planning,
great.
surveying, engineering.
Yep, that's great.
And thank you so much for the question about the $10 million. We're kind of stacking up a lot of these big projects. We have a number of places to seek funding, and Ramella is extremely progressive and active about that. We work together. There's Job Infrastructure Act money coming to supplement what DOT already has. We have federal delegations sometimes have individual appropriations, which we can apply for. There's other federal funds. We also have GO bond, GRT bond. So we use all of those resources to fund some of these bigger projects. And we're constantly, Ramel is really good about keeping an eye on like what needs funding next. So right now, one of the ones, for instance, that the Impact Fee Committee has allocated some funds to is Arroyo de los Chamisos Crossing. So that one's actually using up most of the funding that we've given it, and we don't want it to stall. We're looking forward to at least a $10 million construction budget there and thinking about where we're going to get that and how. So we're always looking to keep the projects moving and use the various funding sources available. And I'm confident that we will get them funded.
Yeah, and I recognize we have to have stuff designed, and then maybe there's a little risk there, but you got to do it. And I think it's important. And this is a project that the city needs. That area needs to be updated. So certainly in favor of that. Okay, is there a motion? Are there any more questions on this project, or two projects, I suppose? Or can we get a motion for 6D?
Move to approve item 6B.
Is there a second?
Member Klaus seconds.
Thank you, Member Clow. Ms. Martin, will you do a roll call?
Yes. Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Member O'Reilly,
Yes.
Member Clow,
Yes.
Member Conway,
Yes.
Member Hamilton,
Yes.
Member Guerrero Ortiz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Any other matters from the floor? Member Conway? Sorry, you're muted.
I'm sorry, is it matters from the floor or matters from the committee?
Currently matters from the floor, but we can quickly shift to committee if there are none from the floor. All right, let's go matters from the committee. Member Conway.
Thank you. I appreciate staff's work on all this stuff. I did, Mr. Logston, I did attend that mayor's summit on housing that you produced all that data for. And we were really looking at the growth areas of the city and, all the periphery of larger multifamily developments that are ringing our city and the priorities of trying to do infill. And there's, certainly some changes of zoning. And what emerged from that meeting, I think, was we're going to have another meeting, but also you can just sense that the priority is going to be the third phase of Tierra Contenta. And so I I don't know how we get that on our radar or how on the staff's radar that we have a limited amount of road funds. And I'm anticipating that at some point there's going to be some funding gap that might end up coming to this committee. And so I was looking at the balances on our reports that staff prepared on the 2 agenda items. And I want to make sure that we don't, that the next items that come before this committee, I'm hoping that the priority list that we keep talking about, that we leave that money in the bank for some of these really larger projects of the city around housing. There's not really a question there. It's just a discussion item, I guess, for everybody. Like, do we anticipate that the Tierra Contenta Phase 3 will be coming that there'll be a funding request coming before this committee?
Ms. Wheeler, do you have a comment on that?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for sharing some results of that summit yesterday. I was wishing that I could have made it over there, but we had our budget hearing at the same time. So as I think I've mentioned before, we did receive $800,000 of NMDOT funds for the design of Tierra Contenta's Spine Road and Infrastructure and Loop Road. That is actually more than was required for the design. So that's extremely well funded. And we also expect to submit for construction funding to NMDOT. It's important to remember the city cannot pay for that road in entirety. We can only contribute a portion that's proportional to the affordable housing units at the site. So we do intend to fully subsidize the project through DOT funds, the $800,000 for design, and then probably about $2.5 million for construction. And that's really all we can contribute by the Affordable Housing Act, and the developer will have to pay for the rest. So that's our plan. And so I think, maybe I'll give it some thinking about, what might be the gap between what we could get from DOT and what we can contribute. And I think $1 million would be the top number that I probably just think right now that we might want to think about having if DOT doesn't come through with the 2.5 that we'll be requesting next year.
Yeah, thank you. That's
a good comment. So thank you, Member Conway, for bringing that up, especially as we look at, if post these allocations, we'd have 1.2 million left for roads. So if we wanted to earmark $1 million, right, then we're quickly running out of funds. I know that we will be getting more funds coming in because there will be more construction, more impact fees, but that's sort of a moving target and hard to exactly know where we'll end the year at, right?
I think my thinking along this is that there's not always the CIC. We don't always put funding into projects that are gonna create more funding for our very committee. And I just, like these 2 items we just approved. I mean, they're responsive to growth, but are they going to really result in more impact fees coming in? And I just think the potential for us to see that, to play our role as a committee, to see that 3rd phase go through. There's hundreds of homes that all of a sudden will be generating impact fees that can come back to us and just be responsive to the growth, especially in that affordable housing realm of our city. So thanks for indulging me in that little conversation. I'm interested if anybody else has thoughts on that too.
Member O'Reilly?
Yeah, I want to thank you, Miles, for bringing up the topic of Tierra Contenta. And how long Phase 3 has been sitting out there, and seeing impact fee monies go by when they could be used there. I just want to clarify something. The city can theoretically fund all of the roadway infrastructure for the Paseo del Sol extension. It's not limited by the anti-donation clause of the Constitution, because we have placed that road on the impact fee capital improvement plan. But we don't have the money to do that, obviously, because I think the latest estimate I heard was $14 million for the construction of that road. And I also think that would say that that's not how Tierra Contenta has ever worked, and it needn't fund all of it. Even if there was that kind of money available. All that's really needed is for to jumpstart the construction of the road so that tracks can be sold and Tierra Contenta can begin operating the way it has 20 years ago, which is selling tracks and then using the proceeds of those sales to further extend roadway infrastructure. So, yeah, I'm very glad to hear that there's maybe a 2.5 million out there that Regina's talking about. I think we really should think about the remaining $1 million that we have sitting there unencumbered in the roadway impact fee fund and assigning it to that, because just in my opinion, there is no more important project that has an impact on so many levels across the city as phase 3 of Tierra Contenta, because it touches on so many different city priorities. Fixing Bishop's Lodge Road is very nice. It'll be very nice for the people that live over there. But most of the people who are needing to live in affordable housing don't live along Bishop's Lodge Road for obvious reasons. And I just also point out to Commissioner Conway that about your comment about bringing in additional impact fees from the development of those kind of areas, and you're absolutely right. Just a reminder that only about 55% of the homes in Tierra Contenta would actually pay impact fees, because the rest would be waived. But it's still a significant amount, and it is in the many hundreds of homes. There are over 5,000 people living in Tierra Contenta now, just in the last 30 years of its construction. And boy, phase 3 has it's the single project in the city that can have the biggest impact on affordable housing, far beyond any of the smaller projects that are being done on Siler Road or anywhere else. So for that reason alone, I as a committee member here will continue to push for us to make sure what we are giving that road extension as much money as we can in the circumstances. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Wheeler, you've had your hand up for a bit.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your comments as well, members, and support for Paseo del Sol extension. Just to clarify, the city can only subsidize the infrastructure for the affordable housing portion of Tierra Contenta. And since the extension of Paseo del Sol serves the entire development, which is not all affordable, we have proportioned that 40% of the cost of the road, because of like what Member O'Reilly said, that the 40% of it is affordable housing. So we can subsidize 40%. And that's how the city arrives at the compliance with anti-donation and the Affordable Housing Act. So it does give us a significant amount to contribute to what is now estimated to be a $14 million design and construction project. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Conway?
So yeah, even beyond the impact fees, I think about the number. I think that the MFA tosses around that for every dollar you put into affordable housing investment, you're getting $29 back ish. I think that was the number that was bandied about. So another question for any Mr. Chair or Mr. O'Reilly or city staff or city attorney, and reflecting back on what some of our previous members have said, that this is an approving body mainly, but there's no reason we can't be an active committee body. Is there anything that this committee can do? Can we create a motion or an action item or a request for an action item for the next meeting to bring whatever gap in funding that exists at the 40% threshold or whatever for us to allocate some of our CIAC funding towards the construction of the Paseo del Sol extension? How do we do that?
Member Clow?
I have another question that's not on point, so go ahead. Let's finish.
Okay. Ms. Wheeler, do you have a comment on this, or I have a comment as well? Okay, go for it.
Oh.
I mean, I think that's a fair point, Member Conway. My thought with this is we should put it to the staff in some ways to help us prioritize what are the funding gaps, if there's other funding that's already helping develop all that and we aren't, putting $1 million towards it doesn't really get them any farther, then, I would say that's not a priority for us. If they could come to us and say, hey, we really don't have the funding. We've looked in, under all these other rocks, and this is kind of a number one priority of all the stuff going on in Santa Fe, recognizing that this committee is behind that project and thinks that that's important for the city's growth. Then I think, yeah, we should push to set aside some of those funds. But I would really defer to staff on kind of the bigger picture of funding, where there's a shortfall and where we can fill in to, help bridge the gap.
My takeaway from yesterday's housing summit was that there does exist a little gap in funding,
Sure.
and it was unclear where that's coming from. So that's what the kind of prompting my line here.
Okay. Ms. Wheeler?
Thank you so much. If I could just say clearly again, the design is fully funded. It's actually overfunded at $800,000, which is the city is trying to get it to TR Contenta. We're getting hung up in our procurement, but I'm going to try to get that hurdle clear today. So that's fully funded, and it will take some time to finish design, at which time we'll have a full and accurate construction cost estimate. We will be applying for NMDOT funding about this time next year for the construction of the roadway. We'll be asking for $2.5 million, which will bring us to about our full subsidy amount. So it's at that, and we do fully expect to get funded by DOT. How much would be something that we can try to forecast for you, but it's really next year this time that we'd have a much better sense of if there was any funding gap. There may not be.
Awesome.
Thanks.
That's helpful. Member Clow.
Oh, yeah. And I think it makes sense not to tie up money that could be used on other projects that are more imminent than Tierra Contenta. That is because of where it's at in the process. It's going to take time for it to occur. I just want to make sure with the confirmation of the assistant city attorney, we just make recommendations to the governing body. Is that correct? So all we do is recommend. I mean, we do say we approve, and we probably should change our motions to have it be that we recommend that the governing body approve this expenditure. And I'm glad that all we do is make recommendations, because it feels better to me that somebody else is making the final decision.
Ms. Pagali, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Member Clow. Yes, that is correct. And it is officially CIAC is Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. It's in the name. But yes, technically you are not actually approving, you are recommending approval to the governing body, who then actually approves or denies.
We're approving the recommendation.
Correct. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Are there any other matters from the committee? I'm also willing to give everyone 45 minutes of their day back or more, whatever this was scheduled for. Member O'Reilly.
Just real quickly, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, first of all, I want to also thank Lee for all the work he's done on this, stepping in after Carlos left. And before you go, Lee, to start your new project, I'm sure I'll see you over there since we're going to be neighbors. What is the status of the members of the committee right now? I know we've had some members who haven't shown up for quite a while. Have other members resigned from the committee? Will there be new members appointed?
That's a great question for which I don't have an answer. I mean, I've noticed as well, there are a couple of people I don't really even hear back from. No, that's a great question, and we can try and come up with an answer for you there. But honestly, I don't have one now because, I haven't had my full attention on this committee as we've discussed. I kind of just keep putting together meetings as needed. But I can ask Jason that, our land use director, and get an answer for you.
Okay, I just asking because, a couple of those members have an awful lot of experience in land use planning, former public works directors, etc., who would be, I think, really helpful to everyone. So thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Fagali.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Also to answer that question, so far as we have been told, there are 9 people still officially on this committee. It probably is a good idea to check with the folks who have not showed up to see if they think they're still on the committee, but according to the city, the membership is full currently.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Member O'Reilly. And for me, I wasn't able to make the last meeting, so again, I apologize. It would be helpful if we had, clear schedule, or we can just cancel them, even if we just want to hold the time every quarter, something like that. If there's no items, it just is a little easier for me. I have sometimes a busy schedule, and it's hard to make it work last minute. But this was plenty of time, plenty of notice. So maybe others were struggling with that. Do we have a plan to replace or get anyone new from the city's standpoint to be in charge of putting together stuff for the committee?
Mr. Chair, as I understand it from Jason, we had a candidate to be the CIAC planner, and that fell through. I don't remember if it was, we've had a couple of planners fall through, only one for this position as far as I understand, but we had a guy we couldn't pay enough. We had a guy who wanted relocation costs to come here. So Jason is still working on it. I know we've got both our assistant directors coming in soon and a planner manager, but yeah, they're still searching for a planner to kind of dedicate themselves more to CIAC. We had, again, we had one, but it fell through.
Okay. Yep, just figured I'd ask the question.
We could probably fund that. That would fall under our jurisdiction. It's growth management. I'm just kidding.
It would be nice. Okay. Member O'Reilly.
I just wanted to point out that the state law allows us to use 3% of the total impact fee funds for administration of the funds. And when we're talking about $7-8 million, that's quite a bit of money, and certainly enough to fund a staff position.
Do we know if that's a rolling calculation or how you peg that? Because if you spend it down, then you can't pay for someone.
I'm not sure how that exactly works. I'm sure Ms. Fagali could answer that. But in the past, the city did have a person who was partially funded on a yearly basis through impact fee funds. That person has since retired, but that person was being funded for quite a while that way, partially anyway. So I think it's definitely doable. I'm sure the city could find a way to do that if they wanted to.
Okay. Member Cloud, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, Noah told us quite a while ago that 3% was going to be used for that position. I don't think it's the problem of the money. I think it's the problem of being able to find a person in this day and age that wants the job.
Ms. Wheeler.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And yeah, I just wanted to add that it's not about the money. There's money to pay for a $1,500 relocation. It's about the process. If things are just bogged down awfully, as Matt knows well. So it's not the money.
Okay. Well, hopefully someone will be found, but in the meantime, I appreciate you spending your time on this, Lee, and the rest of the staff, because you guys are really what make this happen. We're here to just provide a little guidance. Okay, Ms. Wheeler, do you have another comment, question? Okay. With that, is everyone okay if we adjourn? I forget, do we need a formal motion to adjourn, or can we just adjourn?
No, you don't. You just call the adjourn.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.